You are standing in a gym, gripping a bar heavier than you were sure you could lift. Your hands are chalked. Your knees are locked. Somewhere on your wrist, a small screen is quietly logging your heart rate, ready to tell you later exactly how hard you worked today compared with yesterday. Nobody is timing your ancestors. There is no mirror to check their form, no protein shake waiting in a locker, no one filming the set for later. There is also no gym. There is no such thing as an optional hour after work, set aside specifically for building strength. For your ancestors, this was not a workout. This was breakfast. Miles on foot before midday, hauling and digging through the afternoon, and often more walking after that, in search of whatever the day still owed them. This was every single day for hundreds of thousands of years before the very idea of exercise existed as something separate from simply staying alive. And here is what should bother you. By nearly every measurement scientists can take directly from bone, your body loses that comparison. Not narrowly, not close. An ordinary ancient forager, or even an ordinary ancient farmer, carried a skeleton built stronger than yours, and neither of them ever spent a single minute deliberately training for it. That is not an insult. It is data. And it raises an uncomfortable question. What exactly were they doing every day that could reshape a human skeleton that completely? And why did that ability simply disappear? Here is a piece of the story most people never hear. The answer is not extra effort. In some ways, it is closer to the opposite. Bone is not like concrete, poured once and left to set. It is alive, constantly dissolving and rebuilding itself in direct response to whatever force gets placed on it. A 19th century German surgeon named Julius Wolff spent years documenting exactly this. Load a bone again and again in a specific direction, and it thickens precisely along that line of stress. Stop loading it, and it quietly thins back out. Your skeleton is not a fixed structure sitting inside you. It is closer to a running record of what you actually make your body do, written in real time, which raises the deeper question underneath all of this. If your own bones are still exactly as capable of that kind of rebuilding today as your ancestors' bones ever were, what does that say about the body sitting in this chair or standing in this gym right now? The same effect shows up in modern athletes, in miniature. A professional tennis player's racket arm often carries noticeably thicker, denser bone than the other arm. An ordinary, measurable demonstration of exactly what Wolff described more than 100 years earlier. There is a second kind of evidence too, and it is even more direct than bone thickness alone. Where a muscle attaches to bone, repeated, forceful contraction leaves a mark, a rougher, more pronounced ridge, built up exactly where a tendon pulled hardest over and over for years. Anthropologists studying ancient skeletons read these muscle attachment sites the way a mechanic reads wear patterns on a machine. On many ancient skeletons, those ridges are dramatic, in places more pronounced than anything found on a modern strength athlete. This is not a guess built from assumptions about primitive people being tough. It is a physical signature left directly on bone of exactly how hard specific muscles were used, and for how long, across an entire lifetime. For most of human history, that record was written by the same hand, every single day, starting almost from the moment a child could walk. Miles covered on foot, searching for food. Roots and tubers dug out of hard, resistant ground. Water, firewood, and children carried, sometimes all at once, for miles. And throwing. Here is where it gets interesting. A Harvard researcher named Neil Roach, working alongside biologist Daniel Lieberman, spent years studying one very specific ancient motion, the overhand throw. The human shoulder, it turns out, can store elastic energy, the way a drawn slingshot does, releasing it in a way no chimpanzee, no gorilla, and no other primate on Earth can replicate. Every time an ancient hunter threw a spear or a stone, that shoulder joint absorbed forces most modern humans never generate, not even under a loaded barbell. Do that daily, for a lifetime, beginning in early childhood, and bone simply grows to match the demand being placed on it. And it did not start in adulthood. A growing skeleton responds to load far more dramatically than an adult one ever will, adding density and reshaping itself most efficiently while it is still under construction during childhood and adolescence. An ancient child was not handed a spear to play with occasionally on weekends. That child was carrying, digging, climbing, and throwing from the earliest years memory can reach. Which means the muscular, load-bearing body being described here was not achieved starting at 18 in a gym. It was already well underway before most modern children have picked up their first video game controller. Now, for decades, the working assumption among researchers was straightforward. All of that walking, throwing, digging, and carrying must have burned dramatically more energy each day than a modern, largely sedentary lifestyle does. More movement should mean more calories. It seems obvious. Then anthropologist Hermann Ponzer actually went and measured it directly. He tracked the real, total daily energy expenditure of the Hadza, a hunting and foraging community in Tanzania whose daily movement closely mirrors ancient human life, and the number that came back should not have been possible. Their total daily energy burn was barely different from an average adult living a typical sedentary life in the United States. Ponzer's explanation for this is stranger than the finding itself. The human body, he argues, does not simply stack every calorie burned by activity on top of a fixed baseline. It quietly reallocates energy instead, trimming spending elsewhere, background inflammation, some reproductive and stress hormone activity. So the total stays remarkably stable no matter how physically demanding the day becomes. Ancient humans were not burning more fuel than you do. They were spending the same fuel very differently, funneling far more of it directly into muscle and bone, because their bodies had no other choice in the matter. Not more exercise, in the way a fitness tracker measures exercise, just movement that never actually stopped. Spread across an entire lifetime, in constantly varied loads, walking, throwing, digging, climbing, instead of packed into one intense hour and then avoided for the other 23. You do not get to skip leg day when leg day is simply this: walk 12 miles to find dinner or do not eat dinner. Here is a question that should be sitting in the back of your mind by now. If daily movement alone explains all of this, why does not every modern subsistence farmer or every construction worker carry ancient-level bone density today? This is where the story turns genuinely surprising. In a widely reported study, researcher Alison McIntosh at the University of Cambridge examined the arm bones of Neolithic women, farmers who lived roughly 7,000 years ago, and compared them directly against the arm bones of elite, living, competitive rowers. Rowers trained specifically for hours a day to build exactly this kind of upper body strength. The ancient women's bones matched them. In several cases, the ancient women came out stronger. These were not warriors. In most cases, they were not hunters either. They were grinding grain by hand for hours, day after day, their entire lives, starting in childhood. The strength was not a special program, a supplement, or a genetic gift. It was simply what an ordinary human body becomes when using it fully is never optional, starting the moment a person can stand upright. If this story needed a single villain, it would not be a smartphone, a car, or an office chair. It would be something far more ordinary, a basket of stored grain. Christopher Ruth, A researcher who has spent decades measuring cross-sections of human bone from skeletons spanning tens of thousands of years, traced the decline in human bone strength with unusual precision. It does not begin with cars, desks, or smartphones. Bone strength across human populations begins falling roughly 12,000 years ago, right around the moment agriculture and settled village life start replacing constant foraging. That is long before factories, long before office chairs, long before anyone had ever spoken the word sedentary out loud. The tools changed first. Fewer people needed to walk 12 miles for dinner. Grain got stored in one place instead of chased across a landscape season after season. And bone, being an honest physical record of demand, simply stopped being asked for as much and quietly started building less. The decline did not happen all at once either. It looks less like a cliff and more like a staircase. Robust hunter-gatherer bone, a first drop as farming intensifies and daily foraging distances shrink. And then a second, much later drop, as industrial technology removes manual labor almost entirely from daily life. Two separate declines, roughly 12,000 years apart, both driven by the exact same basic mechanism Wolf had already described. Less demand, less bone. It has been shrinking gradually in that same direction ever since. Which is where this comes back to you right now. Somewhere on your phone, there is very likely an app congratulating you for closing your rings today, or gently reminding you that you are behind on your step count. Nobody had to remind an ancient forager to move. Movement was simply how the day worked, whether anyone wanted it to or not, from sunrise to well after dark. That protein shake waiting for you after training? Your ancestors' equivalent of it was dinner. Earned by real hunger, not measured out in grams because a label said so. Here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Your skeleton has not changed, not in any deep evolutionary sense. The same bone that helped a Neolithic woman outrow an elite modern athlete is sitting inside your body right now, fully capable of the exact same kind of reinforcement, still responding to load exactly the way Wolf described more than a century ago. What is different is not your biology, it is your day. Populations who still move the way ancient humans did, including some of the same modern subsistence and foraging communities studied alongside Ponce's Hadza research, continue to show measurably denser, stronger bones than people living sedentary lives without ever touching a barbell. Farmers who still walk long distances behind a plow, or laborers who spend entire days lifting and carrying, show the same pattern in smaller form, bones noticeably denser than desk-bound peers of identical age, with no gym membership between them. The body is still listening. It is still keeping the record, faithfully, in real time. It is just that almost nobody's daily life is dictating what gets written into it anymore. We did not lose the capacity to become that strong. We built a world that no longer requires it of us, and then built gyms to simulate, for one optional hour, what used to simply be how an entire human day happened to unfold, without anyone asking permission. Your ancestors never trained a single day in their life. They just lived, and the living itself was the training. You have to choose to walk 12 miles today. They never once got the choice not to.